camera. Hi there. Good evening. It is February 12. Okay, it is February 12, 2022, and it is almost 9 p.m. in the evening here where I am here in the Philippines. So happy Valentine's Day soon. Okay, it's gonna be uh, another love month. And speaking of love, we all know that there are so many different. Hi there, Zel V. Thanks for dropping by. As you know, we have so many types of love, and they are, according to our philosophers, these kinds of loves are all co-equal. So they're all important, and they matter uh, in equal degrees in magnitude. And these types of loves are as follows: love of God. I mean, love of God. We have love of country, and we have love of family, love of career, love of a friend or platonic love. We have love of nature, or love of earth, or love of ecology. For this session, let's talk about love of country. Okay, love of country vis-a-vis the existing Comelec or Commission on Elections weapons ban for this year's national elections. Uh, Vis-a-vis another point of interest, which is a scenario that I uh, I actually got during the live stream of my good friend Jose Rizal Adventures on gun ban. Now, my good friend Jose Rizal Adventures is into prepping and survivalism, and he is a competitive shooter and a gun collector there in the United States, particularly in Texas. So that's why he had gun ban as one of his topics recently, along with some friends of his, other YouTubers, including Ricochet Line. Okay. Um, the scenario is, what if there is a foreign invasion? So we are currently with a gun ban in effect, but what if there is a foreign invasion? So may gun owners slug it out, or fight it out with the foreign invaders. So feel free to comment down below. So by the way, I'm Jason, your host. This channel is a small YouTube channel called Hagbayon Channel, devoted to current events, particularly Philippine current events, literature, rock music, because I'm a bass guitarist, martial arts, blade culture, prepping, and survivalism. But first, why is it that the Comelec is the one, is the one calling the shots during election period? Okay, during election period, even before it or even after it. So the answer is this is because it is mandated by the 1987 Philippine Constitution. So under section 2, paragraph 1, article 9 of the 1987 Constitution, under the powers and functions of the COMELEC. So let's quote the Constitution. It says, the COMELEC has a power and function to enforce and administer all laws and regulation relative to the conduct of an election, plebiscite, initiative, referendum, and recall. So, by the way, we are discussing this as part of current events, and I happen to be a college professor as well, and actually a law graduate. So I studied these matters, although I I still have to take the bar exams though, but I am uh, allowed to share my little knowledge of the law, although I'm not allowed to practice before the courts in some cases. All right, or in most cases actually. Um, from the constitutional provision that we just quoted, we now go to this next question: why is the COMELEC coming up with stuff like the gun ban? So why is the COMELEC coming coming up with stuff like the gun ban? Is it a legislative body? So that's our question. Is it a legislative body? So what do you think? Okay, comment down below. Actually, the COMELEC is not just a legislative, quasi-legislative body, or not just a constitutional commission tasked with enforcing and administering all the laws and regulations relative to elections. It is also a quasi-judicial body, quasi-judicial body, because in the same constitution it was also said under section 2, number 2, article 9, that the COMELEC shall have exclusive original jurisdiction, no, over all contests, over all contests relating to the elections. So, it has exclusive original jurisdiction over all contests relating to the elections. So that's it's a kind of a quasi judicial uh, power. Now, going back to legislative power, the power to actually enact laws, the COMELEC is also a quasi-judicial, no, a quasi-legislative body. Okay, we can glean upon this as per the case of Orseo versus COMELEC. Okay, there's a case, it's called Orseo versus COMELEC. You see, uh, our laws, okay, are based on the Constitution. It's also based on the statutes or the laws legislated by Congress. It's also based on issuances coming from the administrative bodies and the executive branch of government, and also legislation by the LGUs. And also, we also base our laws, because even if these are not really laws, these are, they shall comprise, or they shall be part of the legal system of the country. Uh, we also base our laws and legalities as per jurisprudence or case laws or decided cases by the Supreme Court. So that is why we can also look at judicial, issuances like uh, jurisprudence coming from the ESCRA, of course, Supreme Court reports annotated. Uh, we have Orseo versus Comelec. It's a March 26, 2010 case, which says that the Comelec gun ban is a valid subordinate legislation. So, what is subordinate legislation? It is legislation by an administrative body, not by Congress. So, it is legislation by an administrative body, particularly usually executive branch. Okay, um, not by Congress. So it's a delegated power. So it's part of our administrative law. It is a kind of legislation as well. It's subordinate, so it has to be valid. One characteristic or one requirement for a legislation coming from an administrative body to be actually valid, that the subordinate legislation must be germane to the purpose of the law. Germane to the purpose of the law, in this case, the Constitution and our law on firearms and ammunitions, etc. The Constitution, because the Comelec gun ban is indeed germane to the mandate of Comelec, and also uh, the Comelec gun ban is germane to the purpose of the law or law on firearms and ammunitions uh, and explosives as per uh, the state's effort to regulate gun ownership in the Philippines for what? For public safety. So it's germane. Uh, Public safety would also be something that we need during elections because to conduct uh, a peaceful elections, people must feel safe and must be confident as to their you know safety so that they could exercise their right to suffrage you know without fear, without intimidation, etc. So in the case of Orseo versus Comelec, the Supreme Court said that the Comelec gun ban is a valid subordinate legislation and germane to the purpose of the law. So it's a valid subordinate legislation and it is germane to the purpose of the law. So this case actually makes it clear to us that the Comelec is really a quasi-legislative body. In fact, in the same case, the Supreme Court also ruled that airsoft, airsoft toys, airsoft guns, and even air guns, air pistols, air rifles shall be included. Okay, shall be included in the Comelec gun ban. Uh, However, replicas of airsoft and air guns shall be excluded. So these are actually toys already. Toys that are evidently, by just one look, that they are toys. But airsoft guns, they actually look very much just like the real, the real deal, the real gun, and air guns as well. So that's our answer to the question as to why the COMELEC, comes up with uh, issuances like the COMELEC gun ban. These issuances, although they are not actually laws, they have the force and effect of law. They have the force and effect of law, which brings us to the question: what is the coverage? What is the coverage of the so-called gun ban? What is the coverage of the gun ban? Or the gun ban is actually Comelec resolution number 10728. Sorry about that. My dog is barking again. It's actually Comelec resolution 10728. The title is really not gun ban. So it's not really called gun ban. It's not really called weapons ban because the blades community here in the Philippines uh, would rather call it weapons ban and not gun ban. But the title of the resolution is actually rules and regulation on the ban on the bearing, carrying, or transporting of firearms or other deadly weapons and employment, availment, or engagement of the services of security personnel or bodyguards during the election period of the May 9, 2022 national and local elections. So it's actually a very long title. But then people like to call it gun ban, but the Blades community here in the Philippines like to call it weapons ban. Why is that? So why do why is it that the Blades community? Hi there, Yumi Rain TV. So hi there, thanks for dropping by. Why is it that the local Blades community uh, loves calling the gun ban as weapons ban? We'll answer that later. Now, what is the coverage? What is the coverage of the Comelec gun ban? As a student of law, I also read the resolution. So for one, it includes firearms. So violation, carrying of firearms, etc. Carrying, transporting, bearing of firearms outside of residence, even if the one carrying has a permit or an LTAP or has a permit to carry. So firearms, how we define it, as defined under Republic Act 10591, okay, it refers to any handheld or portable weapon, whether a small arm, a light weapon that expels or is designed to expel a bullet, shot, slug, missile, or any projectile which is discharged by means of expansive force of gases from burning gunpowder or other form of combustion or any similar instrument or implement wherein the barrel frame or receiver is considered a firearm. So that's a firearm and it's included. Okay. And the meaning firearm actually includes air guns. Let me show you my air gun, air pistol. So I have actually an air pistol. So this is an example of a prohibited item by Comelec gun ban. You cannot bring this outside of your houses. Even if owning an air rifle or an air pistol does not require LTAP, or does not really require PTC, permit to carry, when you want to go hunting or you want to go plinking in your backyard, going out of your house, for example, when you go to the farm or go to an open space, you really don't need PTC or you don't need to have LTAP. Even then, uh, a thing like this is also prohibited. You know? As we said earlier, because it looks like a real gun, perhaps, or it works like a gun in one way or the other, because even if it does not have a bullet, a real bullet, or with gunpowder, etc. It also expels a projectile. Although the projectile is just a pellet. Let me show you an example of a projectile of an air gun. I am an avid air gunner, so it's a 22 cal pellet. So this is an example. So it works like a gun, and the purpose of the law is really to for us to have a peaceful and smooth elections. And if you have people with bad motive, with bad intentions, and they want to intimidate people, they can use an air gun still. They could do it. Perhaps they could try to pretend that it's a gun, or well, an air gun can actually still expel uh, a pellet or something, so it can still hurt people. So I think that's why it's included in the enumeration. So again, it's germane to the purpose of the law, which is for the COMELEC to conduct peaceful elections, you know, and there are for the law on firearms. It's almost just the same to ensure that there will be uh, gun owners or something like that, air gun owners, ensure that they are regulated for public safety. So that's it. So it shall include airsoft guns, because airsoft guns actually look so real. They look like the real deal. And replicas slash imitations of firearms in whatever form that can cause an ordinary person to believe that they are real, including the parts thereof as defined under pertinent laws. So including the parts. So it includes antique firearms actually. Antique firearms. Imitation firearm as per Republic Act 10591, or law on firearms, ammunition, explosives. Okay, as used herein refers to a replica of a firearm or other device that is so substantially similar in coloration and overall appearance to an existing firearm as to lead a responsible person to believe that such imitation firearm is a real firearm. So that's why airsoft guns are included. That's why airsoft guns are included because they look like the real thing and could be used by people with bad intentions. Uh, to make the elections less peaceful. Okay, what are the other items covered? Ammunition. When it comes to ammunition, ammunition as defined under Republic Act 10591, which is a complete, unfixed or unfired unit, okay, consisting of a bullet, gunpowder, cartridge case. Is my pendant an ammunition? Apparently, it's not because uh, an ammunition must be complete. So it must have the slug itself for the bullet itself, the gunpowder in the casing, the cartridge. I mean, the cartridge case, primer, okay, or loaded shell or with gunpowder for use in any firearm. So this is just for uh, personal effect. So no longer an ammunition. So I guess obviously I can wear this outside. Okay. Another item included, according to my readings, is explosives. Okay. Explosives are actually included. What are explosives? They are exploding. Okay. What's an explosive? It's an exploding substance or agent. Okay. Including the components and raw materials thereof. So not just the complete explosive, but the components as well, raw materials as well. They're also prohibited to be carried, transported, bear carried outside of residence, etc. Okay. What are the other items that are included? Also have accessories of firearms. Okay, parts of a firearm which may enhance or increase the operational efficiency or accuracy of a firearm, but will not constitute any of the major or minor internal parts thereof, such as but not limited to laser, scope, telescopic sight, and sound suppressor or silencer. So, accessories. Accessories are actually also included and prohibited to be brought outside. Um, we said earlier that antique firearms are also included because of course they can still be used to intimidate the electorate. Okay. um, how do we define antique firearms? According to the law, antique firearms are firearms that were made at least 75 years prior to the current date. So 75 years. Okay, 75 years prior to the current date, I mean, but not including replicas. So replicas not included. Okay, and they are also certified by the National Museum as antique. Okay, derives a substantial part of its monetary value from the fact that it is a novel, rare, bizarre, or because of its association with some historical figure, period, or event. So that's an antique firearm for you. So what are the other items included according to our readings? Deadly weapons. That's why our local blade community would refer to the gun ban as Comelec weapons ban because it actually covers all weapons, all types of weapons, deadly weapons. So sweeping, sweeping coverage. How do we define deadly weapon? So deadly weapon actually includes bladed instruments. So let me show you some bladed instruments. So this is a bladed instrument, a beagle style knife or bolo. Apparently it's included. Okay, something like this one. Okay, Mhm. Really nice, beautiful, but apparently it's also included because it's a bladed instrument. But are there exceptions? No, so this one also really nice. But are there exceptions? Let's find out. Now, deadly weapons include bladed instruments, hand grenades, and other explosives, except pyrotechnics. Okay, provided that a bladed instrument is not covered by the prohibition when possession of the bladed instrument is necessary, okay, necessary to the occupation of the possessor. Number two, or when it is used as a tool for legitimate activity by the possessor. The example given here by Comelec is gaffs, gaffs used in lawful cockfighting. Tari or talon, okay, cockfighting talon. Gaffs or tari. In Bicol, we call it bulang. I don't know why the Comelec chose to give this as an example. There are so many examples. We could include bolo. The bolo being carried by a farmer. Okay, the bolo being carried by a farmer, and I think the bolo being sold by an itinerant merchant. Okay, because sale or uh, you know trading, okay, is a legitimate and lawful activity, especially if you have permit. Okay, so apart from that, BP6 is still inapplicable. So that's why the Comelec gun ban or the Comelec weapons ban, cannot be violative of the law, right? Because it is just an issuance by an administrative body. So it has to be in conformity with the law. In the law, inapplicable as for deadly weapon is BP6. That is why uh, we have some exceptions. Outside of residence, it is not legal to carry deadly weapon, especially bladed items. But there are exceptions as per BP6. We have the livelihood clause. So if you carry it because it's part of your livelihood, it's legal. Or there's also the in pursuit of any lawful activity clause. So, example, as you said, you are gardening. You are gardening in your outside of your gate. You have vegetation outside of your gate, and you are gardening. So of course you are exempted from that. Will not be liable. Will not be liable. Basing, I am a mere graduate of law, but ask the lawyers. Maybe they will say the same thing. Okay, but do not rely on what I'm telling you because it's a case by case basis. So you have to consult your lawyers if you are in a particular situation already. So deadly weapons are actually included. But then again, let's ask ourselves, what are the prohibited acts? Prohibited acts. We already know the items that are covered, but what are the acts that are prohibited? We already gave some, initial uh, you know examples of some prohibited acts, but let's have more. Okay, number one, bearing, carrying, or transporting. Okay, prohibited. Bearing, carrying, or transporting. Of course, firearms or deadly weapons. The elements actually. Sorry about that. I got confused. Okay, what are the prohibited acts? Under Rule 2, Section 2 of the Comelec weapons ban, we have three major prohibited acts. Okay. First, bearing, carrying, transporting firearms or deadly weapons. Okay. First. Second, employing, availing, engaging the services of a security personnel or bodyguard. Third, transporting, delivering of firearms and or its parts, ammunitions and or components, explosives plus its components. Okay. Three major prohibited acts. For the first one, which is the bearing, carrying, or transporting firearms or deadly weapons, we have additional elements. Okay, it must be outside of residence, place of business. Okay, and in all public places, including any building, street, park, and in private vehicles or public conveyances. Another element is even if the person possessing has an LTAP or license to own or possess firearms, and PTC or permit to carry. Exception, but there's an exception, unless authorized by the Comelec. Unless authorized by the Comelec. So that's the first prohibited act. Bearing, carrying, or transporting firearms or deadly weapons outside of residence, place of business, and all public places, including any building, street, park, and in private vehicles or public conveyances. Public conveyances, even if with LTAP or PTC, unless authorized by the Commission. The second prohibited act, employing, availing, engaging the services of a security personnel or bodyguard, regardless whether or not if the 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 bodyguard or security personnel is from the PNP, AFP, and other law enforcement agencies of the government or private security agency or service. So bodyguards could either be from the government or from private entities, security agencies, regardless of that, prohibited, unless there's an exception authorized by the Comelec. We have also transporting, delivering of, this is the third prohibited act. Transporting, delivering, okay, of firearms and slash or its parts, ammunitions and slash or components, explosives and its components. So this is I think for those who travel. Okay, for those who travel uh, or who sell, who actually maybe for those who in the conduct or in the commerce of or the trade of firearms trade. Okay, and which includes the parts, the ammunition, and also the firearm. But there's an exception again, unless authorized by the commission or by the Comelec. Okay, what are the exceptions then? Okay, there are exceptions under Rule 4 of the Comelec weapons ban. Let's check it out. Okay, the main exception is when you are issued a certificate of authority. Because as we mentioned earlier, there's always an exceptions from the prohibition in bearing, carrying, or transporting firearms or deadly weapons, except if you are authorized. Employing, availing, engaging the services of a security personnel or bodyguard, unless you are authorized. Transporting, delivering of firearms, its parts, ammunitions, or components, explosives, or its components, unless you are authorized by the commission. So the general answer is when you are issued a certificate of authority. So that's the exception. But then again, what are the types of certificate of authority? Okay, there's one in section 9. Uh, um, there's a section. I mean, in section 9, uh, these are the types of certificates of authority. We have the number one for law enforcement agencies, PNP, AFP, etc., departments, agencies, offices, bureaus, commissions, and tribunals. They may be issued certificate of authority. Uh, Letter B, for diplomatic mission. So they may be issued certificate of authority. Diplomatic mission, security personnel of foreign diplomatic corps, uh, foreign military personnel, okay, covered by treaties and international agreements. So they may be issued authority, certificate of authority. For security agencies, of course, our security guards should should still have their firearms. Okay, for cashiers or disbursing officers, private corporation, and companies. Okay, if you are working as a cashier, disbursing officer for a private corporation or company, you may be issued a certificate of authority. Okay, for high risk individuals. Okay, qualified official of the government with people under witness protection. Okay, you may be issued a certificate of authority according to the resolution by the Comelec. Okay, there's one for security detail. Okay, public or private. So if you will work as a security or as a security detail, uh, whether or not you are from public, from the government, or from a private security agency, you may be issued a certificate of authority. Okay, for transport, as we mentioned earlier, uh, transport is prohibited. Transport of firearm, deadly weapon, prohibited. But you may be issued a certificate of authority by the Comelec. Also for sport shooters, okay, competitive shooters, okay, for sports, they may be issued a certificate of authority. And more importantly, okay, because I don't own a firearm, so I'm a bladesman. I'm a blades enthusiast. I only have an air gun, air rifle, and air pistol. More importantly, under Rule 13, we have for bladed items. Okay, bladed items are souvenir items. Okay, you may be issued a certificate of authority under Section 44. Okay, Section 44. Souvenir bladed I in sorry souvenir bladed instruments, which are considered as ornamental display items, are not covered by the prohibition on the bearing, carrying, and transporting of deadly weapons. So, if the bladed item is considered as a souvenir, okay, ornamental display, okay, they are not covered. But then again, how about blades that are actually souvenir items, but they're actually real blades? Okay, that's a question. They are real blades. A real katana, for example, a real uh, blade like this one. Souvenir item, but what? Real. Can be used. Um, in my view, I think even if real, but if given a certificate of authority, I think you're good to go. What are the guidelines, however? There must be guidelines. So let's look at Section 45. Okay. Um, this rule, okay, certificate of authority may be issued only for DOT accredited shops and stores. Only for shops and stores that are accredited by or accredited with the Department of Tourism. So you have to ask, is the shop or store accredited with the Department of Tourism? So if the shop where you're buying the bladed item is accredited, then you're good to go. But you have to ask for authenticated sales certificate. Authenticated sales certificate. Okay, because it's going to be the proof. You know, it shall work as the proof that the item is indeed a souvenir item. Okay, a souvenir item. Now, the authenticated sales certificate must contain the control number, the name and active contact number of the accredited shop or store, the date and time of the purchase, the complete name of the purchasing individual or the buyer, the nationality, if applicable, if a foreigner, the number of days needed by the purchasing individual to bear, carry, and transport the bladed souvenir or item from the shop to a temporary stopping place or destination, which must not go beyond the election period. Okay, it must also include the number of days allowed to stay in the Philippines, if applicable. So, the temporary stopping place is actually a place where the buyer or the bearer of the blade must stop, or where he needs to. It's a place where he needs to stop for at least 24 hours. Okay, so 24 hours or more before reaching the ultimate destination. If it's less than 24 hours, you need not list it. But if you have to stay there for a long time, then you have to list it. It must also include the exact temporary stopping place, the exact address. Okay? And of course, the ultimate destination. Okay, it must also include the complete name and signature of the sales clerk. Of the sales clerk. Now, the accredited shops or stores must ask or must submit. Must submit weekly to the Department of Tourism this list or the list of information that is included in the authenticated sales certificate. So apparently the accredited shops and stores, okay, are duty bound to submit weekly to the DOT the the authenticated sales certificates that it issued to to certain individuals. Okay, and the DOT is also duty bound to submit to Comelec, okay, to the Committee on Ban on Firearms and Security Concerns. Okay, it's also duty bound to submit to it the the list of accredited stores. Okay, the list of accredited stores, so that the Comelec is actually aware of the list of accredited stores. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's it. So now going back to the invasion scenario. Um, what if there's an invasion, but there's a gun ban? So I'm not a gun owner, but it was a topic. This was mentioned during the live stream of Osarisal Adventures last, or I think weeks ago. um, what if there's an invasion, a foreign invasion? There's a gun ban. So what do you do? How do you defend the country? So that's a question. I think I actually posted there my personal answer. I said that I think if the gun owner decides to fight back, you know, or decides to fight off the foreign force, I think that action won't violate the gun ban because it is defendable, as per the Constitution. I think it is constitutionally sound to do that. You know, it is constitutionally sound and legal to do just that, based on Article 2, Section 4 of the Constitution itself, which says that the prime duty of the government is to serve and protect the people. The government may call upon the people to defend the state, and in the fulfillment thereof, all citizens may be required under conditions provided by law to render personal, military, or civil service. So, as I said, if you decide to fight back, you guys, gun owners, I think you can do that. Well, this is my opinion on the matter. Uh, my opinion as a legal researcher, as a law graduate. Okay. Um, let's look at the case of the United States of America versus Pompeii. It's an August sec. It's an August 6, 1915 case. The United States versus Pompeii, August 6, 1915 case, which actually talks about uh, posse comitatus. Okay, posse comitatus, because this calling out power, okay, this calling out power by the state, by the president, is called posse comitatus. Article 2, Section 4 is posse comitatus. So what are the elements or the requisites for a posse comitatus, for a valid calling out power? Okay, those involved must be male citizens, able-bodied, number two. So able-bodied men. So male citizens, able-bodied, and they must be 18 to 55 years old, and there must be a justification for the calling out power. So there's a justified condition, okay, existing, okay, for the president's calling out power. So let's repeat. Posse comitatus is valid if the you know the citizens involved are male citizens, able-bodied. So you may be exempt. If you are not able-bodied, you're sickly, etc. So you may be exempt. So male citizens, able-bodied, 18 to 55 years old, and there is a justified condition, okay, existing. For example, there's an invasion, there's lawless violence, something. Okay, so the calling out power of the president, the calling out of the president is actually valid. Now let's read some quote from the case of United States versus Pompeia on August 6, 1915 case. Okay, according to the court, this ancient obligation of the individual to assist in the protection of the peace and good order of his community is still recognized in all well organized countries in the posse comitatus power. Under this power, those persons in the state, country, or town who were charged with the maintenance of peace and order uh, were bound to pursue and take all persons who had violated the law, okay, which includes foreign, foreign force that's trying to invade, for example, trying to invade the Philippines. For that purpose, they might command all the male inhabitants of a certain age to assist them. This power is called posse comitatus, or power of the country. This was a right well recognized at common law, okay, an exercise of police power. So this actually also applies to invasion. Invasion. And according to international law, there's no need to wait for a declaration of a state of war from Congress. As you know, the Philippines has the policy of not starting wars. Okay, we can only declare a state of war and actually engage in a defensive war. We cannot declare war. We cannot declare war as a matter of international policy. Okay, but then again, when the invaders are already before you, do you have to wait for a declaration of a state of war from Congress? Apparently, you don't have to. Okay, because under Article 51 of the United Nations Charter, it says that nothing in the present charter shall impair the inherent right. So it's an inherent right of inherent or congenital. It's an inherent right of individual or collective self-defense if an armed attack occurs against a member uh, of the UN until the Security Council has taken measures necessary to maintain international peace and security. International peace and security. So apparently, you need not wait for a declaration of war from Congress to engage, to engage the invaders. However, it is a known fact that it is better, okay, to 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 have our professionals, you know, just let our the professional soldiers do the matter, do the job, okay, because still soldiers are, better trained, and police officers are better trained in doing that job. But as we said, under the principle of posse comitatus in Article 51 of the UN Charter on defensive war, uh, you may I think engage. You may engage using your your firearms, even if it so happens that the invasion occurs during a gun ban. Okay, the invasion occurs during a gun ban or a weapons ban, like what's happening right now. Because the ratio legis, or the reason or the soul of the law, or the heart of the law, the reason for the law, according to a legal adage, is the soul of the law, the heart of the law. Ratio legis. The ratio legis of the weapons ban is to protect the state, okay, and government and the people, so we can have a better elections. So if there's an invasion, it would render the elections nugatory. It will make it without a purpose if we are under foreign rule. Of course, even if Such is the case, the invading force may still appoint, may still appoint Filipinos to run the government as a puppet government, or of some sort. But then again, the Comelec is there to strengthen the state, the government. So it would be, shall we call it, absurd if the weapons ban becomes the reason or the instrument, uh, the legal instrument to make it impossible for us to defend our country. So that's it. Now, looking back, as per uh, as per this resolution, and as per Batas Pambansa 6. Now, as blades enthusiasts, we have to look into take into consideration that as per blades, BP6 is still in effect. Okay, plus Rule 13 of the Comelec Resolution 10728. So remember that the so-called livelihood clause, or in pursuit of any lawful activity clause, they are still being respected by the Comelec weapons ban, or the Comelec Resolution 10728. So they are still in effect, even if we have the so-called weapons ban. And we still have to consider Rule 16, of said weapons. I'm sorry, Rule 13. Okay, we still have to consider Rule 13 of the Comelec Resolution 10728, or the weapons ban, because it allows for, carrying outside of residence, or carrying outside of residence, or transporting outside of residence bladed weapons that are deemed to be what we call as souvenir items, so long as you bought the blade from uh, DOT accredited shop or store, and you were given the the what? You were given the authenticated sales certificate. Authenticated sales certificate. But the question now is, how about those who sell at the marketplace? Do they have to get accredited with the what? With the um, Department of Tourism? Most of them just sell workhorse blades, or workhorse items, or blades that are not really collector's items or souvenir items. But you know what? Souvenir item as a term is relative. For some people, a simple bolo, a simple, even an ugly knife can be a souvenir item for some people. So I think the rule here is to really observe this particular issuance, that you must buy the blade from an accredited shop or store. So that is the rule. Whether or not the blade actually looks expensive, or it's cheap, or it looks beautiful, or it looks like an ordinary knife or an ordinary bolo. Okay, ordinary knife or an ordinary bolo. So, but then again, we have to consider BP6, because selling, is a lawful activity. More especially if the seller, marketplace seller, is a what? Is a seller that is with permit, you know, from the city government, or municipal government, municipal unit, the local government unit. Okay. And another question is, how about those who actually just ship their products? Okay, if you just ship using a courier, so that's another point of interest, because here the prohibition is on bearing, carrying, transporting deadly weapons, or bladed items, for example. That's the prohibition. Okay, when you transport outside of your residence, place of business, okay, um, and in all public places, including any building, street, park, private vehicle, or public conveyances. So Oh, but if you just ship your knives or your blades, so here transporting apparently is more of personal transport. You are traveling with the blade. This is just my contention. No? I may be wrong, so don't take my word for it. But if you ship the item, is it not that you are not really transporting it personally? Look at the provision on bladed items as souvenir items. There's a need, okay, to place as information along with the authenticated sales certificate the number of days needed by the purchasing individual to bear, carry, and transport the bladed souvenir item. So here, the one being regulated is the bearing and the carrying and the transporting of the bladed item, souvenir item, by the purchasing individual. Okay? Because the law, the evil, being sought to be avoided by the law, is for people to be carrying their blades outside of their residence, and to be transporting their blades outside of their residence place of business. Because it could, you know, it could be like, it could open, a window of opportunity for people with ill motives to actually bring out those blades along with firearms, for example, and actually destabilize the elections. So that's, I think, is what's being regulated by the law. That's the evil being avoided. The evil sought to be avoided by the law. But if the purchaser or the owner is not in possession of the blade because it's with the courier, and the delivery guy may not even know what's inside it, okay, even if it's declared. Okay, you may just declare it as, say, I don't know, maybe camping tools. So if you declare it as such, then the delivery guy won't really know what's inside. So, and chances are the delivery guy won't have any evil motive to open up that pack and destabilize the elections. So that's my view on it. So if you ship it, I think you're not violating the that particular provision of the weapons ban or Comelec weapons ban. I guess we need to ask for clarification from Comelec on this particular concern. Yeah. Um, Another thing that I read is that when when going through going through a Comelec checkpoint, the rule must be plain view only, plain view doctrine only. You don't have to open your bags, open your trunk, etc., etc. So the police officers, this time the police officers are being what? Are being deputized, no? They being deputized by the Comelec to to do this particular duty, to man the checkpoints and make sure that no one will be destabilizing the elections by carrying weapons, carrying weapons inside their vehicles or in their person. Um, that's only plain view doctrine. So they will look at your vehicle, use a flashlight if needed, and you don't have to open your trunks, etc. So the evil being sought to be avoided is for people to be going out of their houses and with weapons, destabilizing the election. So if weapons are not apparent, weapons are not being brought out. More or less, the situation is under control. So I think the law is trying to prevent a situation wherein it's already difficult to control the the scenario where there could be a kind of a failure of elections. Usually, in some areas here in the Philippines, particularly in the south, there are some instances when uh, there have been there had been I mean there had been failure of election. Okay, there have been instances when there was failure of election because armed men were out in the streets with their long firearms, firing and destabilizing the elections, etc., etc. So I think that's the evil being sought to be avoided by this resolution. So if you're, I think you are uh, a law-abiding citizen, a farmer. For example, you own a farm. You're going to your farm. You have your bolo with you, and you practice what we call as carry ethics. You have concealment ethics, carry ethics. You really make sure that your bolo is wrapped properly, and inside your bag. Or I think that's not a prohibition because that's not what the law is trying to trying to prevent. It's not. I don't think the law is preventing farmers from doing their uh, uh, having their livelihood. As we said, as per Blades culture, as per weapons ban, as per Blades, um, we have still here to consider BP6 because the so-called livelihood clause slash in pursuit of any lawful activity clause is still in effect. Okay, along with the fact that the Comelec allows for purchase and transport, personal transport of blades that are deemed to be souvenir items purchased from DOT accredited stores or shops. So I think if you go to your farm with your bolo, I think that's allowed because that's not the evil being sought to be avoided by the law. Okay, the evil being sought to be avoided if you bring it out in an intimidating manner, especially if you're near the Comelec the election precinct, etc. Especially during election time, carrying it, you have your knife, you have your bolo, and there's so many of you, and you're carrying it as if you're gonna declare another revolution or cryo balintawak or something. So that's the evils being sought to be avoided by the law. Anyway, that's it for this session. It's almost 1 hour. Um, if you have any comment, if you have any comment, just write it down. And I hope we can ask some people from the Comelec about some of the uh, points that were raised during this live stream. All right, Jason here from the Hagbayon Channel and TMS Talks. Remember, the pen is mightier with a sword and with some legal knowledge and readings. Thanks for watching.